الكتابة رحلة لها تفاصيلها ومواقفها. بعد شوي بنسمع من المنتج التنفيذي والكاتب في مسلسل أوزارك. مستوعبين؟ أوزارك مع كولسبي عن كيفية فهم تعقيدات حياة الإنسان من أجل تصور الشخصيات والمواقف اللي ما تنسي واللي نحس إنها حقيقة ومعنى في بعض الأحيان. الجلسة هذه أتوقع أني ما بدخل كواليس، أتوقع أني بنزل وأقعد معاكم وأحضرها. نرحب بالأستاذ باول في حديث ملهم. رحبوا معاي كلكم على خشبة المسرح. Welcome.
Thank you. I know him. Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah? Hello and welcome. My sincerest felicitations. My utmost thanks for the invitation to talk to you. This is the beginning of my talk. Actually, that was the beginning of my talk. Now I'm past the beginning, not very far past the beginning, but I am not yet in the middle of my talk. If I were indeed in the middle, I have an idea what you would say. You'd say the man's talk was too short. He didn't say enough, and I was hoping for more, but don't worry, there's more. I'm still at the beginning, at the middle of the beginning, I'd say, maybe the early middle of the beginning. It's hard to tell. And now you're thinking, where is this going? Where will it end? When will it end? But you cannot know that, only I know it. Here's something else I know, or think I know. I think I know that I'm standing before you. That's what it looks like anyway. One of me facing you. Which is kind of strange when you think about it, but let's not think about it too long. Instead, let's take a moment to look at the other people who are near you, if there are people near you. And if you're married to the person on your left or to your right, turn to the other direction. And if you don't know the person next to you, although it doesn't seem as that's the case, maybe nod to them or whisper to them. You can do that. I give you permission. If you're sitting on the end and there's no one next to you on the other side, I'm sorry, but you can leave early. So take a moment. Okay, that's enough. Eyes front on me. Look at me. Size me up. See me. But seeing me, if I say seeing me, actually means merely, technically, that my image carried by light reaches the retina of your eyes upside down, and your brain flips it automatically. And in hearing me and hearing my voice, my amplified voice, that means that your brain connects these sound waves which reach you to it connects to my flipped image from your retina automatically. And you say, I see what he looks like and I hear how he sounds. Apparently he wrote Ozark, but now you're not so sure. Anyway, here I am. And after I finish my talk, if you're so inclined, please come up and talk to me, shake my hand, and your brain will connect the feel of my handshake with my flipped image and the sound of my voice, and it will do that automatically. But you'll come up to me and we'll chat, and maybe we'll exchange first names, and you'll say we've met, and that you know me, kind of. But that's me. Now let's look at you. I can see you. I can see some of your faces right now if I focus. But you can't see yourselves. You can never really see yourselves. And don't go telling me about mirrors. I know all about mirrors. I have them at home. But you can never really get a good or a natural picture of yourself in a mirror. For one thing, you're always staring at yourself when you look into the mirror. You're gazing into your own eyes, and that's not really you, is it? And you very rarely hear yourselves. Not really. I mean, I'm happy to admit that I talk to myself sometimes, but I don't really listen to myself. I mean, why would I? But you're listening to this talk, maybe. Maybe you're thinking, this man is so interesting, or this man is such an idiot. But whatever you're thinking, these thoughts come to you automatically. Maybe you're daydreaming or distracted because you're falling in love, or have fallen out of love. Maybe you're not sure because you're hungry, because you ran out of money and will end up on the street. But no, you say, I will never be on the street unless things get really terrible. But I know you think about these things. Everyone thinks about these things because these thoughts come automatically. And maybe your parents are gone. Maybe that makes you sad. Maybe your parents are sick, or maybe you're sick of your parents because they're overbearing or inattentive. Maybe your children don't listen to you the way you didn't listen to your parents. What will you do about it? What can you do? Well, you must think about this. The answers do not come automatically. And maybe you need a job. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you already have a job, and it's thrilling or it's torturous. Maybe your friends are happy to listen to you complain about your job or your parents or your children. They are there for you, your friends, or maybe they're not. Maybe they've abandoned you, and now you're wondering, what is the point of life? And believe me, that answer doesn't come automatically either. Now let's look at all of this, shall we? The way we experience other people and the way we experience ourselves. Aren't they very, very different? And yet, even though you're sure you know yourself in a much deeper way than you know me, for example, many of you may still feel as though you don't really know yourselves. We constantly ask, who am I? But me, whatever version you've decided I am, you think, well, I know him well enough. That's who he is. I don't like him, and afterwards I'm not going to shake his hand. And as the philosopher Maurice Nicoll says, we're all invisible, physically invisible to ourselves, and psychologically invisible to the rest of the world. That's strange, isn't it? And it might seem painfully obvious, and maybe it is, but I find the most important things usually are. See, what we see, what we say is visible, and therefore think is true, is but a superficial perception produced by our senses. But what's significant about this, that is to say, of particular significance, is that we don't regard these perceptions as superficial. We see them as real and true. This is what they mean, I think, when they say that we use so little of our brains. Actually, we use our brains fully, only we use them to form wildly imprecise versions of the truth. Nicoll also says that if we could discern the invisible side of others as easily as the visible side, we would live in a new humanity. But I don't think he's being particularly optimistic. For one thing, he's dead. But I digress. And now, I suspect I may be in the wrong place. I think I might be in the wrong auditorium or the wrong conference. Is this not the Saudi Symposium on Objectivity versus Subjectivity as it relates to the four senses? All joking aside, because there's considerable joking going on, that is up to this point, which is more or less the middle, but not necessarily the middle of the middle, which is not only a digression, it's a meta-digression. Anyways, which is not a word. The word is anyway. Anyway, you wonder, how does this relate to writing? Screenwriting or playwriting or fiction or nonfiction? And the answer is, I'm not sure. Well, I recall a pivot where I semi-magically turned metaphysical philosophy into writerly relevance so that you can avoid cliche in the here and now when push comes to shove and where the rubber meets the road. Because they say you're supposed to write what you know, and I agree with that, but not necessarily in the way you might think. Because what do you know, really? You know yourself. I repeat that. You know yourself. Sort of. And I believe that the spirit of Maurice Nicoll would appreciate my telling you that only you have direct access to your invisibility. And whether you're a writer or not, you must learn how to use it. Because when you learn how to use this invisibility, you can begin to understand my invisibility. In other words, know thyself, and you will begin to know others. Because, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, in a way, this indivisible, visible paradigm is what truly unites us. So if seeing doesn't really lead to believing, because seeing only misinforms us, and perpetuates the misinformation. What do? We close our eyes. And this is how we see. Just like if we're worried about time and the time it takes to get something done, we slow down. We do the thing and forget about results. And that was not a digression. Now, if I could just see a show of hands, if I could see, if the house light can come up just a little bit, I can kind of see, of the people out here who actually write on a daily or a semi-daily basis. Okay, keep your hands up. And with people with their hands in the air, keep them up. If you've ever had the experience that something you've written just came to you, like a gift, like, I don't know where that came from, but it came from somewhere. Like Vince Gilligan says, I hear it and I type, it's like I'm a court stenographer. Keep your hands in the air if you've had that experience. That's amazing. That's amazing. That's what I think we're looking for. A connection to what Jung calls the collective unconscious, the willingness to believe that others are like us, no matter what they look like. The openness to understand that everyone has an interior life, the openness to receive that interior life. Okay, you can put your hands down. Thank you. Take a break. Say hello to the people on your left or your right. Maybe ask how they're doing. Because they're just like you. Not least because what you saw in them the first time or thought is probably not true. It's actually quite far from the truth, unless you see auras. And if you do see auras, I hope you'll come up to me afterwards. I really do. But this is the challenge for writers, and actually for non-writers, to remember that the key to the door of the collective unconscious, where truth lives and cliché is always transcended, is to never, ever automatically reach any conclusion about anything or anyone. Because none of us is the only one in the world with an interior life, or the only one falling in and out of love, or the only one who is hungry or worrying about money, or worrying about their parents or their children, or the state of the world. But to awaken in this way requires great and continuous effort to break the spells our senses have cast upon us, and to wake up from our individual slumbers. So here we are, at the end of the middle, or maybe the beginning of the end. So I'm going to tell you a little story, since I'm a storyteller, don't you know, in a room full of storytellers. I was at my therapist's years ago, about 10 years ago, I think, and I had gone to this particular therapist whose number I'd carried around in my wallet for years because I'd been playing my wife in tennis. I was beating her 5-love, which means 5-0 for you non-tennis people. I was beating the pants off my wife, and I was probably trash-talking her a little bit, referring to my manliness and my prowess pretty unconsciously. And then my wife started to come back. 5-1, 5-2, 5-3. I won't keep you in suspense. She beat me 7-5. It was crushing. And I was so broken by it, I'm embarrassed to tell you, so completely thrown that I finally called this therapist whose number I carried in my wallet for years. And I'm embarrassed to tell you this, too, and also a little tickled, but that's not the story. This is the story. The story is that I had just turned a script into a producer, a script for a film, a script I'd struggled with, but I struggle with all of them, actually, in almost exactly the same way. And I was telling my therapist about having turned it in, and he asked me, how did I feel about it, et cetera, the way therapists do. And we talked a bit about how I felt about it, and then I said something to him that I'll never forget, and I'll also never forget what he said to me. I told him I thought there was a chance, a very slim chance perhaps, that this producer would read this particular script I'd written and have absolutely no notes for me, because the script, he would say, is kind of perfect. Not only that, but this producer would look at me with great reverence and tell me that I was a godsend because he has these writers turning in imperfect scripts. And what he would like to know, this producer, is if he paid me some extra money, Would I mind talking to those other writers and explain what I do and how I do it? That is to say, would I be so kind? And this therapist, whose name is Barry, whose number I had carried around in my wallet for years before I called him, asked me if I thought in a million years that would actually happen. You know, if the producer would actually say that to me. And I told him, well, maybe in a million years it would happen only once. And he said, it will never, ever happen. And I just stared at him at a loss. And he said it again to make sure I heard him. He said, it will never, ever happen. You understand that? He said there are 3 fantasies many of us cling to and live by, and that they're holding us back, these fantasies. And here I must tell you that I have no problem at all with fantasy as an idea or a pastime, except when it comes disguised as reality. Then I've learned it's a problem. Barry Michaels, and now I've given you his first and his last name. He said that we must always be on the lookout for these 3 fantasies. One, that we can know the future, that we can ever know the result of something, of anything, because we can't. And 2, that in our lives, we might do something, accomplish something great or small, that will relieve us of all future pain, annoyance, or obstacle. And 3, that as a result, we will thereafter never need to expend any further effort, ever. But the reality, Barry said, was this: we will always, all of us, need to expend effort. We will always encounter pain, annoyance, and obstacle, and none of us gets to know the future. And it's a funny thing about knowing the future, because actors who are playing roles actually do know their future. They know what lines they're going to speak. They know where they are going to walk and sit down. They know the scene, the film. They know how it will all end. Their job is to forget that they know that. Whereas all of us in the real world, whatever that means, but in our lives, we're given a set of circumstances. We develop a fixed idea about what might happen. In a way, we write the script when there is no script to be written, because always, anything can happen in any given moment. And as writers and as people, we might remember that. So if as writers we know that our task is to write characters who constantly encounter obstacles, and through these encounters, these struggles, our characters learn and shift and eventually become wise, why do we as writers get so thrown in our own lives when obstacles present themselves and we are asked to learn and shift? Because writing is hard in exactly the way that life is hard. And so it should be hard, like my mother, who, as they say, is no longer with us, and yet I feel her with me all the time. As she used to say when in my bachelor days I experienced yet another horrible romantic mishap. She said, "Love is hard, but it should be easy." And I'm happily married now, and I know she's right. So should writing be easy, painless actually, but only when you understand that it's hard. And now that I've reached the end of the end, I hope for you and for me too that it's only another beginning. Thank you very much.